What up, y'all? Welcome into episode 3 of the Skolcial Network. Thank you guys for a lot of good feedback last week, Brev. We got some love for that one.
Yeah, it was nice. I wanted to shout out. There seems to be what's the word? Just a very common commenter with his username is still keep on losing, like Skull. It's a really silly, funny acronym. And he's like, we have a very frequent, that's the word, commenter with negativity, not just on the Skolcial Network, but on Vikes now. That guy kind of rocks because what he says makes like no sense, but it's good to have, I guess.
Yeah, I know it's good to have haters. You can't be successful without having people constantly ripping down everything you say. But
For sure.
speaking of completely unbiased criticism, let's talk about what we're going to dive into today. The quarterback position, mainly the three guys who have been most closely tied with the Vikings. We'll talk about a couple others that may be an option, probably not as much, but we're going to dive in to three dudes. I know you're really excited to talk about at least two of them, Brev. Who are those three quarterbacks we're diving into today?
Yeah, I think we're looking at May, McCarthy, and Penix. We talked pre-show that Daniels, he seems kind of untouchable. You mentioned because he might go number 2 at Washington, which is what Vegas seems to think, and B, if he's there at 3, New England, it might as well. They probably might just take him.
100%.
Yeah.
I think just because obviously they might like May, they might like a number of different guys. McCarthy, if they trade back, they might go Nix or Penix. But I think Daniels presents creativity on his own that those other quarterbacks don't. And with New England having zero anything, or they have a KJ Osborne now, let's give credit where it's due. They probably would prioritize a quarterback who can create offense on his own. So yeah, I'm sure JJ would love having Daniels there, but I just don't see the likelihood.
It's probably not gonna. It'd be cool if it happened, but I guess for the sake of our 3 most realistic options, seemingly right now, Daniels is worth a mention, but probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, and I think we'd all be excited if he did. If that's the case, I'm still all in on the Caleb Williams train, but I don't know. Something weird could happen with that guy and the Bears. Two weird groups of people interacting. But as far as who you see as most likely, Brett, we'll start with you. Out of those three guys, who do you think most likely ends up holding up a purple jersey on draft night?
I think most likely would be McCarthy, and I thought that especially before the trade, and I've said it a million times across all shows on this channel that May is now your ceiling, McCarthy is your floor. So now it's kind of a scary game of do you want to give up this much for McCarthy now if you're gonna, because I think it seems to be the consensus he's going top 6. And I mentioned it on, I think it was a Friday or Saturday. This trade kind of is really similar to what a trade would be before the Texans trade anyway, because your second round pick this year is now 23rd overall, and you had to get them second next year. But I think you'd be disappointed with McCarthy being the pick now. But I don't really. I try not to look at it that way for my own coping, because just the thought of Drake May and a purple jersey would be so sick.
What do you think is the right price? Obviously, we talk about 2 first this year, 1 first next year to move to 3 is a likely conversation ender. Hopefully, shake hands, send it to the league. But what do you think if let's say the target is 5 with the Chargers? What do you think the asking price would be, and would you feel more comfortable with that price at maybe pick 5?
11 and 23 really should get you to 5 just by themselves. If the Chargers want to play hardball, you have to think about when you're trading up for a pick, the negotiation isn't just between you and the team you're trying to trade with. You're trying to outbid another team potentially. So Minnesota might be trying to outbid Denver is the most likely one. They might be trying to outbid the Giants, who's one pick behind the Chargers. So that would be a tough
Yeah,
ask.
people ignore that value, right? Move back one spot, still get the guy you want if you're the Chargers, and gain some form of future capital, maybe a second rounder this year. I do think I'm curious because we know Harbaugh as a coach is a guy who likes to have a lot of control with the roster, maybe more so than most, and that kind of comes with his reputation. Curious ultimately who's going to make that call, because I think one unspoken factor in this is I think if Harbaugh gets a say to do right by his guy, McCarthy, I think you look at the situations. Indoor stadium with the weapons we have in Minnesota, a team that's 1 year out from being 13-4, or 1 year removed, I should say, compared to the Giants, who had, coach of the year candidate in Brian Daboll, and now are already talking about him being on the hot seat. If that's a factor where Harbaugh has any influence in the prices, or I should say the offers are pretty equal, I think he's going to look out for his guy, and ultimately we win that trade. But there's no way in hell, I don't think, the Chargers trade that pick to the Broncos. You're not going to give your arch rival team your prized possession of a college quarterback. So there's some interesting dynamics there at pick 5.
Well, yeah, and look at how the Chargers win football games too, because the Chargers are in an easy spot to predict that a wide receiver is going to be the pick. And I should say, look how Harbaugh specifically wins football, like wherever he goes, if it's at Michigan or if it was in San Fran, like splashy receivers aren't really on Harbaugh teams ever. So I think Harbaugh would be all over if he wants to do right by McCarthy. Cool, be my guest, and trade with us, get 11 and 23 theoretically. The Charger Brock Bowers should still be there at 11. That's a Harbaugh type pick, and 23 there would be plenty of great defensive players left. You could even get a lineman for Herbert. So I don't know, if you take everything into consideration, I think 5 is the most likely. Like, I don't think the Cardinals are going to trade down at all, even though they're saying they're willing to listen. It would be malpractice if they came out and said, no, we're just really not going to even listen to offers. And the same thing goes with New England, because that got reported. And it's like, no, it's malpractice if they say, no, we're not going to listen to offers. And New England, I think, said, like, it's reported that they're not going to. They're saying that to up their price on a trade.
100%. Well, it's interesting because it is funny looking at Twitter being like, we can't trade into the top 3 because New England said they aren't open to trades. And then they look at 4 and say the Cardinals aren't interested in trades, and them saying they're interested in trades is just a smokescreen. I'm like, well, what's the benefit there? You hold all the power, right? I guess maybe they're trying to get blown away. We were going to maybe look at Facebook dumpster fire of the week. I'm having a Facebook dumpster fire of the week type thought because I really dove in. All I could see was Herbert for McCarthy, and we've already talked about that dumb idea. This is an abysmal thought, but let's say you're looking to trade 11 and 23 to get to 5 with the Chargers, and they say, hey, we want a receiver, and we're not going to have an option that we like at 23. Would you trade 11 and Jordan Addison for pick 5 straight up and keep 23? Or is that just too much?
So this is going to ruffle some feathers, but I have talked to people about this that you've had a couple run-ins on Twitter with. And that's really not a crazy idea. Like, Jordan Addison, I love Jordan Addison. It's really not a crazy idea, and I really wouldn't be completely against it. Like, if you take off the purple shades, which I love having on, you take off the purple shades, and you think, is it really worth keeping? Like, imagine still having 23 in that situation. I'd be more open to it if you were using that to trade up for May, because New England needs the receivers, but Addison wouldn't really be a fit with the receiver room. Doing that for pick 5, I'm not so sure, like, if it's for McCarthy. But I think in the general sense of, like, packaging a player like Jordan Addison is not a crazy thought. So
the contract, the 5th-year option, the price point. My concern from the Vikings perspective is suddenly all of these things you're setting a rookie quarterback up with change dramatically, because if there's one knock on Jefferson, and it's his ability to deal with double, triple coverages to an extent. And I think that largely comes down to his size and where we use him on the field. He's not a guy who's going to be leaping over 20 dudes at a time, to be able to go moss someone. But with Addison gone in theory and then Hawk out an indefinite amount of time, I think that hurts Darnold, the rookie, whoever's under center, because the defenses have an easy read. Who's your second option then? Brandon Powell, all 5'9" of him running down the field on a deep ball? No, I mean, I would be open to it, but I would definitely then say receiver suddenly becomes a need at 23. So I think it actually creates the issue that you're aiming to solve.
It does kind of, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I'm by no means am I saying trade Jordan Addison and package.
Breaking news headline: Brev hates Jordan Addison, thinks he's washed.
I know that's all that's going to come of me potentially saying that, but I don't know. I like to zoom out a little bit.
Hey, if we can get people just to clip things out of context and share it on the internet,
it's a perfect one.
We've made it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the move. I agree with you in regards to McCarthy. I think he is the most likely outcome. I think, I can't remember if it was FanDuel or DraftKings. The sports books have him at like minus 150, minus 180, depending on the book, to become a Viking. Then again, that means nothing. Will Levis was like minus 600 to be a top 4 pick, something like that. But I think he just fits. Obviously, some people are a little miffed that KOC and Kwesi weren't at his pro day today, but there's conflicting reports about if the workout's yet to come or if it's already happened that I'm seeing. I would not be surprised if it has already happened. But I think he's a good fit. I think he'll need development. But I think, can't believe I'm saying this, I think with the current team we have, Darnold could buy you enough time without absolutely train wrecking any semblance of real football. So you have McCarthy as the most likely. Who's your second most likely option, and what do you think it'll take to make it happen?
I think even because realistically, you could. Oh, if they stuck and picked Michael Penix at 11. So,
please do tell. I'm curious. What are your thoughts?
We'll get to that. Even with the potential of that happening, I think May, like you're in position to pick Penix. So even with that, even with that being in place, I think May would be the next most likely. Because again, I think Minnesota and New England have some kind of they've had talks. There's been some kind of at least
they've chattered.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with that, May would probably be the next most likely. And thinking about it and looking at recent history, I think we've all kind of been like, all right, you need to take both your first next year, take your first, or both your first this year, take your first next year. I think you have to prepare yourself for the potential of adding in a first or second round pick the year after too. Because if
2026,
if you look at the Trey Lance trade from a couple years ago, that was 4 first-round picks, and they spanned 3 years. And Trey Lance was like, Drake May's a better prospect than Trey Lance was. So, and New England, of course, is justifiably and rightfully so. Again, it would be malpractice if they didn't try to get every single bit out of the trade. I would prepare yourself for giving up 4 first-round picks. At that point, it doesn't hurt too much because the first round pick, I'll worry about that in 2 years. And then suddenly it's 2026. What if things haven't worked out with the quarterback that you draft? Like if May doesn't work out somehow.
Easy. You just do what San Francisco did, draft some random guy with the last pick, and suddenly you're in the Super Bowl. It's that easy.
It must be cool.
Which is really funny because it actively looks like we're just preparing for that situation because we're going to pro days and having private workouts with 2 guys who are projected to be 6th-round picks to even undrafted. Mm-hmm. Plan ahead. That's the Shanahan mentality in KOC that I love.
Yeah, I don't know. I would be prepared for that possibility. I'm not saying I wouldn't trade the 4 first-round picks. If you think he's your guy, you got to do it. And for this franchise, for having that guy ever since Fran Tarkenton, I'd be for it. It would really suck when it's 2026 and we haven't picked in the first round in 2 years. But for if May pans out and he is what he's supposed to be, it's worth it. It's worth doing it.
Who do you think is a better, more natural fit to impact this team? Not necessarily in 2024, but in the next. Really, it looks like 25 is the start of the window we're aiming for, but into 2025, 2026. May, McCarthy. I know your thoughts on our third topic, but out of those two, who do you think is the more natural fit for the Vikings right now?
I'd probably say, all things considered, May. I think McCarthy, from a sense of he's young, he's like only 20 years old. I think he'll be 21 by the time the season starts. McCarthy has all the tools that you want and that O'Connell would want, from the mobility, the pocket presence, the arm, everything. You just got to work on the processing of the reads. And he has a little Josh Allen in him, to where he just like he tries a little too hard to force a play and he'll run around in the backfield, but that's just young quarterbacks. I think from that sense, McCarthy's a good fit. Like, they're both good fits, but May,
Yeah.
just in terms of natural ability, like Drake May is very good on the run. He's very good under. He's good under pressure. He's good at creating plays, even up there. I'm not saying he's as fast or as mobile as Jaden Daniels, but in terms of being efficient on a broken play, Drake May is right up there with him. So just in terms of how good he is, I guess I could say Drake May is a better fit. But really, they're both great fits.
Yeah, and for me, I look at it. Probably, I'd be equally excited with both, but I think the ceiling would be higher with May because of
Oh, yeah.
that arm talent and what he can do. I also think the floor is a little lower because he's got a little bit of that I don't know what to call it, dingus in him sometimes. He just kind of acts a little weird under pressure. Like you said, he can handle it well sometimes, but there's other times. And to his credit, like, he was not surrounded by a lot of talent on that team. But he can get a little farvy. His footwork loses a little bit of stability. But when he has time to throw, he can really sling it. I think McCarthy's probably going to end up being a safer bet if you're just looking at low risk, moderate reward. But man, Drake May bombing it deep to Justin Jefferson, or just a deep route to Jordan Addison. That's
Minnesota.
Minnesota, baby. Hey, I believe I was the first to tweet that like 2 months ago, so I'm gonna take credit. I'm gonna put it on shirts. I know everybody's ordering the shirt JJ McCarthy was wearing today. It's pro day, but I'm just gonna get Minnesota ready to go,
I love that shirt. That shirt rocks. That McCarthy's wearing.
dude. He's got aura, dude. Like, he's got some swag. I will say that for just generic white dude who looks 21, same type of guy I'd see walking around Old Town Scottsdale. He's got some swag. I think he could be interesting. I don't know if he would get a grill. Maybe he would. I don't know. I hope he doesn't.
Probably not. I don't think so.
No, please, no more grills or chains.
Yeah. It was
It's
really
dead.
cool. It was really cool to be super excited about beating teams in week 9, but we can move on from
We
that.
can
For sure.
100% move on. So, yeah, I mean, overall, it's just tough because, really, like, let's call it what it is. Like, we could dissect a lot of things, but I think short of a disastrous type of reach, like Spencer Rattler trade up to 5, and I'll give my thoughts on him in a minute. I think anyone's going to be excited. Maybe different reasons to be nervous or hesitant about a specific quarterback pick, but like, dude, we haven't done this. And even if we stick and pick at 11, that's still what Ponder was taken at 12, I believe. So it's still technically the highest we've drafted a quarterback in possibly ever. I mean, no, I think
Dante Culpepper
was pick 11, I believe.
I think Ponder was pick 12. So the earliest we've ever drafted a quarterback was Dante Culpepper.
So at least we'd tie the record. And I know people crap on Dante Culpepper. Those were a fun few years. Like, that wasn't bad football by any means. But the other alternative that a lot of people have mentioned is, hey, let's say you get beat out trying to get up to the top 5, top 3, can't do it, get boxed out. Not San Diego, Los Angeles isn't interested in trading at 5, and the Giants take McCarthy and have the largest quarterback room in the NFL for some reason. Um, Michael Penix, you already mentioned you wouldn't take him at 11. I agree with you, even though I'm pretty high on Penix. I've been one of the leaders of the Penix parade on Twitter for a hot minute now,
Also,
to your annoyance.
I blame you.
What about, yeah, oh, well, there's a few of us, admin, quite a few different people on Twitter getting pretty riled up on the Penix train. But what about 23? Let's say you're able to get a guy like Byron Murphy, because again, the benefit of this is you get added value of the 11th pick in areas you can address.
Yeah.
Byron Murphy, which again, that'd be really funny to have two guys with the exact same name on the same defense. At 11, let's say is the easy pick. I don't think Jared Verse or another edge rusher makes a ton of sense now. Does Penix at 23 sound a lot better at that position, and given the flexibility it gives you with the 11th pick?
So you know that saying about putting lipstick on a pig?
I've heard it.
Okay, I'm kidding.
I don't know where you're going with this, but I can kind of assume.
I've talked a lot of shit about Michael Penix, and I'm not a fan of him being the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of what I say is definitely hating, but that's just because I see some, not you or any of our friends, but I see just replies to things that I tweet of things that are just completely untrue. And the people do the same about McCarthy and other quarterbacks and whatnot. But I would talk myself into Penix for sure, just because I'm a Vikings fan and I want to be excited. So for sure, if we drafted him at 23, I'll be like, all right, I'll break out the highlights. Like, but my problem with Penix is like not even age and injury history, which is its own thing. And I know his medicals are good in anything and everything, but it's still a concern. In a Kevin O'Connell offense, from what we've seen at least for the evidence, and a lot of it just might be Kirk Cousins being a good quarterback, which sure, whatever. You gotta be able to attack the middle of the field, and Michael Penix sometimes just seems scared to do that. And you can't be scared to do that in the NFL in general, and especially not in the Kevin O'Connell offense. I'm talking like intermediate 15 to 20-yard throws, like dig routes in the middle of the field. We see JJ run a lot.
And Hawkinson's in that range, typically 10 to 15 yards downfield, depending on the play as well.
Exactly. And it's nothing that I'm not saying he can't learn to do that, but the fact that he would be 24 his rookie season, completely broken lower body mechanics that would be really hard to unlearn. You got to coach into him the ability or the want or the desire or the feeling comfortable to throw to the middle of the field. So I would talk myself into it if you can coach him up. If he was like 20, 21, 22 even, it's something to where you can coach him, but he has so many years of experience to where he's going to kind of be what he is. Like if he was to go to a Miami or something, there's a lot of deep balls in that offense. Not that there's not in Minnesota. That's another knock on Penix is being able to throw a touch. A lot of things are kind of just like 100-mile-an-hour four-seam fastballs with him, which is cool. I mean, that rocks, being able to throw the ball hard. But you got to be able to throw a touch and finesse in the middle of the field, especially. And I think what gets me the thing that upsets me the most is because I like McCarthy. People that don't like McCarthy will sit here and go on about the team that he played on, which, of course, Michigan was unreal.
Oh, yeah.
His running back is going to be a third-round pick. His top receiver is going to be a third-round pick, maybe. He has three linemen that will go in the 6th or 7th round. Michigan's defense, of course, was great. Jim Harbaugh is a great coach. So the supporting cast is like, Michigan's a great team, but then the same people that knock McCarthy will go, well, what about Michael Penix? When Michael Penix has a top 10, maybe top 7, top 8 wide receiver going in the draft, top 15 tackle, a running back that's going around the same place that Corm will go maybe a little bit later. He's got 4 or 5 top 90 prospects. And J.J. McCarthy didn't have to do much in the national championship, but they beat Michael Penix in the national championship. And quarterback wins aren't the stat, but I feel like if you're knocking one guy for one thing just because he won that national championship, not having to do a whole ton, but he's proven he can do it when he needs to, but raising the stock of the other guy, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Like if you're cool with both, then cool, but you can't knock one guy for one thing and then go, but I want this guy. It doesn't make sense.
That's fair. You know, it's funny to me because before I was like, I'm interested to hear you talk about Penix, and you're like, I'll go easy, and then yeah, if that's your easy on the guy, man, I'm worried if he ends up being the guy. Dudes, you're gonna start the Penix haters brigade. You're gonna be
I
we're gonna have the
wouldn't.
Penix crusaders and the Penix haters, and
Yeah,
you're gonna be chief in charge, man.
I'd like to say I wouldn't ever go out of my way to like hate on the quarterback. It's
Oh,
like
I
when
would.
oh yeah, but it's like when a president gets elected and then one side it goes for both sides. I'm not trying to start political discourse. Like one side, if one side's candidate doesn't win, then they don't want the president to succeed, and it goes the same for the other. That's like the quarterback situation. Like if Michael Penix gets drafted, I will support the guy and I want him to
Yeah.
succeed. The quarterback of my team. I just don't think that he would be that guy. And if I get proven wrong, I'll stand on it. I've said on 7 different pieces of media in the last 2 weeks how much I don't want Michael Penix to be the quarterback. I can't not stand on it. I will stand on it if I'm wrong. But I don't know. That's the
Well, and you could do what I did, and I was very anti McCarthy until I really dove into the tape. I mean, being out in Arizona, I don't get a ton of Big Ten games, and when they are, it's at like 10 in the morning on a Saturday, and I'm like, dude, I got a kid. He'll wake me up at 8. I'll get him back to sleep, and then I'm just trying to sleep. But I think, and I've seen some people say this, and some people disagree. I think if you were to take mechanics and the concern about left-handedness and the team around them and what offense, where they can throw. If you're just talking about pure arm talent, and I'm not just talking Joe Milton bombing at 80 yards from his knees and being like, look what I can do. I'm talking about placement on those deep balls. I think Penix has the best arm in the class. I would still be very happy to get him at 23. I wouldn't want to take him at 11. I do think there are some valid concerns. Yes, his medicals came back. He got the lollipop from the combine doctor. Yay. But I was thinking about this earlier. And, you hear a lot, well, with a left-handed quarterback, you got to rework your playbook and flip the offense. And yeah, that's true to some extent. Some teams do it less than others when that's the case. Here's my concern is that him being left-handed takes away one of our biggest assets to a large extent, which is Christian Darrisaw. Because suddenly that blind side and the value of that is on his right. And as much as I love Brian O'Neill for what he was a couple years ago, post injury and even before injury in 2022, he hasn't quite been the same. And I think it's some people like absolutely act like you're committing heresy by admitting that he hasn't been the same player the last year and a half. Sue me.
yeah.
Don't sue me. But I don't know what that's going to look like fully 100% relying on O'Neill to be that guy at that position. And then you're also depending on Ed Ingram not getting pushed into his blind side as well. And we know with Kirk looking dead at him, he liked to fall right on top of Kirk or even make Kirk fall. So I think it's just the logistics could be a little interesting. I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. I think a lot of that went away post injuries. I do think there's some self-preservation in his game, which, bro, you blew out both knees. I don't blame you for that. I would be okay with him at 23. In fact, I'd be really excited. I prefer to see the aggression of trading up for a quarterback, depending on the price. I think for May, I'd be just about good with anything. I think with McCarthy, I'd try to stick with the 2 first this year. But I think Penix at 23, if everything else falls apart, is a really good option and has a high ceiling. I do think he has the lowest floor if, God forbid, things fall apart.
Yeah. I I wouldn't want Minnesota to draft him at 23. If they're in love with him, I gotta trust you. I've no.
And that's the factor is who is KOC identify and say this is the dude.
Yeah, if you're drafting Penix at 23 because you're like, oh shit, we couldn't move up, but we got to draft a quarterback because we don't pick till the 4th round. Please don't do that. Just take the best player available.
Or trade back into the second and recoup a third or something. I don't even know if that draft value makes sense, but recoup something and to trade back 10, 15 picks.
Yeah. And I don't even want to say if you're in love with him, draft him there, because if you're in love with him, maybe you should have drafted him earlier. So I don't know.
Wow. Wow. Now he's getting drafted too. Pick a lane, dude. Jeez.
It's so
You just can't do anything right. Oh, if they really loved him, they would have picked him at 11 and not gotten a defensive tackle. Wow.
I like moving.
The agenda is insane over here.
Like a Vikings kicker, always kicking outside the goal. Yeah, I don't know. I would talk myself into it at 23. I'd probably have really emotional reactions on Twitter right after the pick comes in.
No.
But I don't know. If you can't trade up for a quarterback after making the Texans trade, I'm scared. But I think they'll be able to.
I think the Texans trade, and everyone was freaking out. Oh, the Texans were the ones who proposed the trade? Because that came out this week. Oh, there goes any credit Kwesi gets. I'm like, well, the Texans probably proposed the trade because it made sense for them and they knew it made sense for the Vikings. And Kwesi still said yes because he knew it made sense. Like, it's not like a knock. Maybe it's not as much of a like, hey, great thinking, but like it's not. Anyways, but I agree. I think it just depends on how those top 5 picks go. Let's talk about like worst case scenario. You kind of hinted towards it. You can't trade up. You don't love Penix. Because I think we could probably agree, is Penix your QB5 or do you have he who shall not be named above him?
Oh man. So
we're really gonna fight if no.
I did have Bo Nix above Michael Penix.
Goodbye.
As we have drawn closer, I do have Penix edging him out now, just because Bo Nix's offense at Oregon was so gimmicky and everything, and just everything was so close to the line of scrimmage with all his throws. But Penix would probably be QB5.
Okay. Yeah, just making sure. Here's the thing. I think there's like a 10%. I'll get into this in a minute because I have a couple of people, but just in case it is Bo Nix, I think there's like a 10% chance he ends up being something ridiculously special in the NFL. 5% chance. 5% chance. Let's be realistic. And then like a 95% chance he's like what like Ryan Mallett ended up being. RIP, but like kind of that similar like gadget type quarterback who never quite translated to the league, who like had this really interesting film and potential athleticism, but never made it. I think it's like a 95% shot. But outside of your QB5 range, who are 1 or 2 quarterbacks that even if they do draft a quarterback and maybe look for additional depth, I don't know why you would do that why do you want 5 QBs, but who are a couple prospects like you want no part of?
Really, there's not. I haven't done a ton of work on anybody really outside that top 6.
That confident in our GM. I love it.
Yeah, because there's no point for them to draft somebody outside of that realm because they're all going to, for the most likely, they're all going to be Jaren Hall level. And again, optimistically thinking, we still don't know who Jaren Hall is.
So,
yeah. But yeah, I didn't like Spencer Rattler, but the more I've dived into him, I've started to like him a little more. I still wouldn't want us to draft him. But
I do not want and there are people legitimately, shockingly, they're Vikings fans in South Carolina who have like jersey swaps of him in a Vikings jersey or like Rattler MVP season stuff. And I'm like, please, I can talk to you about anything else, but once it comes about rookie quarterbacks, I'm going to block you because of this propaganda. I think if you're Kwesi and you're sitting there and you're like, dude, they're never going to see it coming. Yeah. I'm going to draft like 2 dudes in the first round and then first pick of the 4th round. Mm-hmm. Spencer Rattler. Oh, he's matured since the Netflix documentary and all this. Here's the thing. I believe people can change, but I still think when you have character flaws like that, and it wasn't even necessarily anything over the top, it was just being really conceited and full of himself and being a me first guy, you can change and you can put effort into that, but you get into an area where all of a sudden you're the face of a franchise potentially. You have hundreds of millions of dollars at your peak. You mean to tell me like there's not a chance that comes back and that some of that temptation to really be, Mr. Superstar comes back? I'm not saying that like any of the guys we would potentially take in the top 5 won't be superstars. JJ's a superstar, but the dude's humble to an extent. I mean, he knows who he is, right? But he's not letting that drive what he thinks is necessarily the right decision for team personnel, things like that. Rattler just worries me because I think he's going to potentially be a locker room issue unless he is just wildly different, but also just inconsistent football tape. The product on the field was extremely inconsistent. I think there's a reason that we're talking about the guy who used to back him up as the number 1 pick and him as a 4th to 5th round pick in the same draft.
Yeah.
That's my rant. That's my Rattler rant.
What exactly did he do? Didn't he put teammates under the bus? I don't remember exactly.
Stuff like that. I mean, he threw a hissy fit when he got benched, even though I think it was Lincoln Riley like had to deal with the crowd chanting "We want Caleb" for like 3/4 of football because Rattler had a meltdown and before he gave in because he didn't want to totally waste who was a top recruit in the country. But like those guys were on the same team, and the guy who replaced him, obviously they both ended up going different ways, is the number 1 pick in this draft, and people are debating if Spencer Rattler's even worth a 3rd or a 4th round pick. There's something about that. And for me, it's not worth investing when you have the quarterback hold the Vikings do. That should not really, that should be a million options down the list.
Yeah. And not to mention Senior Bowl MVP means literally nothing. Literally.
4 passes.
Yeah.
4 passes, 4 completions, and a touchdown.
A certain
hey, cool.
12th overall pick of the 2011 NFL draft was also Senior Bowl MVP. That rhymes with Liston Donder.
Wow, I have no idea who you're referring to. I'm completely in shock. That was really great work there. Yeah, but if people are, I'm going to use that, by the way. Next time I see somebody giving me pro Spencer Rattler propaganda, I'm going to search their feed for the term Christian Ponder and see them yelling about we don't want another Ponder, and then I'm going to hit them with that fact or even that clip. I think I'll just clip that and just send it to them in that case. That's great ammo for that. Thank you.
Should do that.
So, final call. Who is the Vikings' first round draft pick if we trade up, or who's the 11th pick if we end up sticking with 11 to 23?
I have a feeling this isn't really going to be the final call because I feel like things are going to change. But
that's true. Okay. Well, final call for March 22nd, a month out from the draft.
I mean, it's McCarthy, probably. And then if they stick, you asked at 11 and 23 who the quarterback would be if they were still picking there.
Yeah, or even who you pick at 11 if those quarterbacks are gone.
At 11, you choose the best defensive player available, and I think Byron Murphy 2, would be the. I think he's going to be ridiculous. I think that's going to be the Aaron Donald of this class.
I like Jared Verse. I like some of those guys, but just with Grenard and Van Ginkel and what we did on defense, I just don't think that's worth the 11th pick there. It's not that pressing of a need when you have no defensive tackle.
Yeah, and then 23, you just go best player. Honestly, both you can go best player available. I guess Byron Murphy, too, wouldn't necessarily be the best player available at 11. I just think he will be when it's all said and done. I love Byron Murphy, too. And, 23. Same thing at 23. As somebody in the secondary, I don't know. Shaquille Griffin, by the way, we didn't mention him. Griffin is that he's going to be here for a year and then he'll be gone. So I don't think
takes away a potential need. I mean, look, if he can give us 2022 Patrick Peterson just in a better defensive scheme, I'd be okay with it. Because Pat Pete had some good moments that year. He wasn't awful until he revealed the defensive game plan or lack thereof on a podcast a week before a playoff game. But that was a decision. But yeah, I think McCarthy, I think there's a reason it's minus money that he's going to the Vikings. I think everything you kind of hinted, like, this isn't the final call. You're correct. Because I think it just depends on if the Pats can look at Drake May and say, not only is this a quarterback that we think is a good option for us, but is he a good option for us now? Because I think the smart thing for the Pats is to trade with the Vikings, accumulate 3 to 4 first round picks. You do not have anything. You have nothing.
Yep.
You're going to get a quarterback killed out there, and I don't think that's ideal. So I think it's going to be McCarthy as of now.
Either way, whoever
we'll have to see.
It could be McCarthy, it could be May, it could be Penix, whatever. I think anybody watching this would be super interested in going to US Bank Stadium next season and watching it happen. And they can use code BREV on SeatGeek for $20 off their first purchase if they wanted to do that.
Wow. I'm really glad our first branding opportunity is just your name and not the name of the podcast.
So I was gonna
thank you for that. Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. I was gonna do because I put
Skolcial
on my list of accounts. It just made the code for me. I thought I wanted to do Skolcial, but
no, it's fine.
We'll get a contract.
Use code Skolcial Network at the liquor store to drink away your sadness from Brev being an egotistical a-hole.
Okay, Dad.
This is good. Brev and I were talking before about how, since there's not going to be much to talk about after the draft until like training camp, this is just going to get off the rails, and you guys are already seeing a preview of that. So we didn't know how long this episode would go, and it's so far our longest episode. Congratulations to us. That is we're pushing 42 minutes.
Yeah, that's a nice long time.
And like 35 of them were just Brev bashing Michael Penix.
Like 27 minutes.
Something like that. Anything else before we log off and see our friends next week?
It's Brev, BREV on SeatGeek.
On that note, goodbye. We're the Skolcial Network. We'll see you next week.